I spent my first 25 years with Microsoft, and I learned so much, which triggered the idea that maybe we should give back. So we're gonna have a podcast. My name is Mark Souza. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Microsoft Asia region. Now I'm gonna be joined by many guests from different companies, and together we're gonna share what we learned. We're gonna talk about technology, challenges, and solutions. So please join us. Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk Tech. In the past episode, we started drilling into generative AI deployments, and we were sharing tips for successful deployments. And we're gonna continue that today. And we were talking about our favorite topic, cost optimization. So I welcome back Dave Nadgir. Welcome, my friend. Dave's a chief architect and has over 2 years experience implementing generative AI projects. Welcome, Dave.
Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for having me again.
Well, we're going to continue with cost optimization. And just a reminder, last time we talked about interaction, and we learned about optimizing prompts, clear and concise. We learned about looking at the data, monitoring your data. So awareness brings insights. You talked about caching and batch processing, all ways to more efficient prompts for better performance.
Absolutely, Mark.
Great. So today, we're going to move over and talk a little bit more AI grinding in many models. So I'd love to hear more insights from you.
Yeah, happy to double click a little bit, Mark. And as we looked at cost being one of the most important part, tokens equals cost is kind of the theme. So as we begin to look at grounding, which basically keeps the model contextually aware of what it should be responding with. Mm-hmm. The pattern that industry is looking at really is, this famous thing called RAG, which is Retrieval Augmented Generation. The core concept here is, can you add this grounding data to your large language models by searching your vector databases, or put in simple terms, by searching to your knowledge sources. Now, sometimes what happens is this contextual data can immensely increase your tokens if you're not being, again, the same thing about concise and clear. So our thinking has been, from what we have learned, is before you query such knowledge sources, do not translate your user query just directly into your knowledge source query. Bring in another model or another LLM interaction or a small model interaction to generate an effective query that contextualizes your model to ground data in the most effective way.
So in simple terms, just like a more precise prompt makes for a better prompt experience performance, when you use RAG and you bring in data sources, more clear and concise the data is, also equates to a better performance and lower cost?
Absolutely, Mark. I think we can take an example of, let's say, a market analysis tool.
Okay.
Instead of querying everything that is out there for a particular market asset, a query can be generated which looks for specific signals or specific parameters of that particular asset. So thereby what you're actually doing is, when generative LLM interaction is being brought in, you're being very specific with respect to what grounding data you're adding there.
Excellent.
So directly correlates into cost.
So more data is not always better data. Precise data, the right data, is part of a good solution.
Yes,
great.
Sir. Yeah, absolutely. And the other part is also about many models, right? I think what we are seeing, especially in the last few weeks, there are different types of models that are out there, and customers are exploring different ways to essentially look at these models. So under the many models key imperative across cost reduction, I think there are three major aspects that comes in. And the first one is about breaking the task, breaking your complex AI task into smaller tasks. And this is where many models can be used. For example, you probably don't need a very complex model for all types of tasks. For example, what we saw with Phi 2 models, it has been astonishingly surprising to us, where it's able to outscore some of these larger models. So SLMs, small language models, are out there for cost reduction as a theme, where you kind of intelligently combine different different models.
So if I'm an insurance company and I want to do a risk analysis on you to give you an insurance policy, I just need data about you and your environment. I don't need to go look at, the world's encyclopedia in order to find the right answer.
Absolutely. And for that, you can use different types of models, sometimes combining with a smaller model, which costs less, maybe, and then when you're summarizing, when you're interfacing, use a more complex model like GPT-4 or even the next set of models that we're looking at.
So models like GPT-4, which are comprehensive and it has a significant amount of data and parameters, world-class. You can also use smaller, more concrete models, SML. But are you worried that just SML without a large model may have biases or incorrect answers, or give you the answer you want to hear versus the answer you should hear?
Correct, in a way, right? Because, for example, you're looking at a simple classification task. We don't really need a large model like GPT-4. You probably want to have a simple model, smaller model that can do that particular task. Whereas when you kind of really look at GPT-4 type of models, to reduce biases, there are different ways that GPT-4 is more adept at handling some of these.
So large language models we love. Small language models are real and important, and sometimes you might need both.
Absolutely. I think that's really one of the major themes for approaching cost.
Excellent.
And the other one around many models is also hybrid, right? Customers do have investments in their journey of AI, and cost becomes an important part where they're combining their specific models that they've invested in, they've built perhaps with their own aspects of domain specialization, and combining them intelligently, keeping a centralized facade, definitely brings in patterns that reduces cost.
Reduces costs and reduces biases.
Reduces bias, yeah.
Excellent.
Improve performance, improve latency, and whatnot.
So we're hearing a lot about fine-tuning, okay? And some of the big questions we get, is fine-tuning more cost or is fine-tuning less cost? Can you enlighten us a little bit about that?
I think it's one of the most strategic imperatives as we look at even cost reduction, Mark. And there's always this question in terms of, hey, fine-tuning means that I need to have an additional cost of training, additional cost of hosting. Does it really make cost-effective a solution when I can probably ground my data ground my models with a lot of data? I think the simple way to kind of look at it is, can we reduce the number of tokens that are sent to a large language model or a foundational model? Bring that intelligence that is out there into fine-tuned models. What that means is the amount of domain data that you would have sent hundreds of thousands of times to these foundational models, you have embedded that intelligence in your model, and thereby your every interaction now has lesser tokens to send. So clearly, while there is an upfront cost for building these fine-tuned models, sure, there is a cost of hosting them, but when you kind of really combine them and you're doing it hundreds and thousands of times, there is a potential saving that comes in from these knowledge that you've already embedded within fine-tuned models.
So this is the big question. Should I just RAG and use grounding data, or should I use fine-tuning? And it's all about reduction of tokens. Reduction of tokens is reduction of cost. So if I'm going to run something 1 million times, all right, by paying the upfront cost to fine-tune, I lower the cost per prompt so that millions of times is cheaper, so overall it could be cheaper. But if I'm only going to run it once a month or once a year, then maybe grounding would be cheaper because I don't have to pay the money for fine-tuning. So the answer is it depends, as long as we're thinking about the number of tokens over time.
Absolutely. And while the token limits are becoming more and more, like you said, if it's very intermittently used, perhaps this may not make sense. But if it's very frequently used, while the context lengths are increasing, perhaps we'll also get rid of the context lengths very soon. But having this dimension to calculate and assess what type of fine-tuned models can bring in more cost effectiveness, I think makes sense, Mark.
Excellent. Some great tips, with respect to helping our customers reduce their cost, whether it's interactive, grounding, or the use of multiple models. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thanks, Mark. It has been a pleasure.
And thank all of you for joining us this week in this episode, and we'll see you soon.